You're listening to the DCAU Review, hosted by Cal and Liam. Streaming on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and at DCAUreview.com. Now, here's today's episode.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 89 of the DCAU Review. I'm one of your hosts, Cal, and with me is my good brother, Liam, our other host. Liam, episode 89 of the DCAU Review is here, and we are discussing another edition of Batman Beyond, and this one has the return of the Royal Flush Gang and what some would dub Terry's version of Selina Kyle, and that being 10 from the Royal Flush Gang. And I say some, and you say it with skepticism, as we'll definitely discuss in this week's episode.
That's certainly what they're going for, as if you remember their first appearance, it literally ends with Terry asking Bruce if he's ever had a situation like this, and Bruce begins to tell him about Selina Kyle. So yes, that is certainly what they're going for with the Melanie Walker /10 character, and this is her reintroduction here.
We're going with episode Once Burned, which is from season 2 of Batman Beyond. This episode originally aired on November 6th, 1999, making it just a little over 20 years old this year, Liam. Well, last year. Yeah. A little over 20 years old last year now. So we'll get into our 4 categories in just a moment. We'll certainly talk a lot about how terrible Terry McGinnis is. But before we do you have the IMDb synopsis for this week's episode ready to go, Liam? You got the pipes warmed up?
In fact, I do. And
right.
This is for the episode Once Burned, as you mentioned, which is written by Stan Berkowitz and directed by Butch Lukic. And that synopsis reads as such. Batman finds 10 determined to rob a rich underground poker game, supposedly to save her family, and he struggles to decide whether to trust her. I would have, if I were the English teacher of that IMDb synopsis, I would have underlined that sentence and just been like, it's too wordy.
You gotta chop it up.
Yeah, chop it up, maybe put a comma in there. But that is basically the plot. It opens with us, a high-stakes poker game for all these kind of kooky gangster characters that we've never met before. 10 shows up to rob the place, and is, of course, immediately confronted by Batman. She tells him it's not what it looks like, and they have sort of a brief fight where she eventually gets away, and Batman escapes from the gangsters as well. From there, Terry goes home to find Melanie Walker in his bedroom.
Wouldn't you know?
And they sort of...
And, of course, Terry, being an upstanding boyfriend, immediately asks her to leave, right?
Oh, you would think. No, he pouts at her for a second, and then they make out. So they kind of rehash what happened in their last episode, Dead Man's Hand, and she sort of apologizes for leaving him hanging and says she's in trouble and she's trying to help her family, and she's on the run from all these people, from Batman and from these gangsters, and he, like I said, they make out, and right before they make out, he gets a call from his girlfriend, Dana. He blows her off, and of course, Dana, being the most understanding, to a fault, person in the history of the DCAU, just lets him off the hook immediately. And then, he cheats on his girlfriend with her, and then his brother and mom come home, and she leaves, and from there, she decides to go back and try to re-rob the poker game, and again runs afoul of Batman, where she reveals to him that the Jokers have allegedly kidnapped the rest of the Royal Flush Gang and are holding them for ransom, and she has to rob this poker game in order to free her family. Only for it, post-Batman and her going to a Joker's hideout and finding out that that's not really the case, we in fact find out that it was all a plot by King and Queen of the Royal Flush Gang to just sort of test Melanie's loyalty.
Yeah, I don't hate that part of the plot. That part of the plot is fine, especially when it first appears that Melanie double crosses Batman. She seems to be complicit in it until you find out that she's actually not. I mean, that was where my head went upon this viewing, because I didn't actually recall the idiosyncrasies and intricacies of this week's episode. But thinking, oh well, she just double crossed him. She's actually working with the Royal Flush Gang the whole time, but actually she's not. It's a test. They're trying to test her to see if she's still worth her medal, and they can accept her back into the gang. Which I don't know how anything from the last episode would have told them. I guess because she's family and because she's their daughter, they so badly want her back. Right. But nothing about that last episode said that she would react like, oh, gee, thanks, Mom and Dad. I'm so glad that you tested me to get me back in the family that I didn't want to be a part of to begin with. Right. Like, it makes they just have no touch in reality, clearly. That, of course, then leads to Batman fighting them because he put a tracker on Melanie, so he finds their hideout, and then he also had alerted the other gang, so there's a shootout between this gang and the Royal Flush Gang and Batman, and then the cops show up, and it's the mess. The end is a little bit of a mess. I guess, all right, big picture plot here. I don't hate the storyline. I think it's interesting, and like I said, it was a little twisty and turny because my recollection was that the Jokers did have them, and then it's, oh yeah, the Jokers don't have her, and then it's like, oh, she's definitely a part of this, and then it's like, oh, she really wasn't a part of this. But there's no real resolution to this character. No, and right before they go into the first Joker's hideout, where Terry has to take on basically the entire gang by himself, she gives him this note for Terry and makes Batman promise not to read it, which he in fact does keep his promise, because Terry throws the note away at the end of the episode. That he does. While he's on a date with his actual girlfriend. Hashtag dating deserves better. But anyway. Forever. But yeah, so it's like they're trying to really sell that, like, she's conflicted. She's doing this because even though she doesn't want to be a thief anymore, she still loves her family and wants to protect them. So she feels like she has to do this. But in the midst of that, she also lies to Batman and kind of makes things worse, and then brings this, actually Batman brings the contingent of gangsters down on them. But it's kind of, I feel like it's not a super strong ending or resolution to any of this, as you mentioned. Mm-hmm. It just kind of ends, and Terry decides not to read the note and moves on. And obviously, you and I, with the benefit of hindsight, or technically foresight, I guess, from where we are in the show, we know this isn't the last time we see Melanie or the rest of the Royal Flush Gang. Right. But if you're just watching this episode as it is, it's not a great resolution to anything. Correct. The first episode ended with the Royal Flush Gang going to jail and Bruce and Terry kind of having a heart-to-heart, which, if you just watched that episode, that would be a fine resolution to that story. Right. But now that you've reintroduced this character and established that, like, it's still a thing and that Terry is still struggling with, to not really have a strong resolution at the end. And in fact, he doesn't arrest 10 at the end of it. She just kind of disappears into the they show her watching on a rooftop, and as the rest of the Royal Flush Gang is being arrested. So I guess we know she's still out there, but it didn't have a strong exit. Yeah, and we've talked about this before, about how the strongest episodes, there's usually character development involved, and that characters, no matter who they are, whether it's the main character or a character that's involved in it, has either changed or evolved by the time the episode ends. Yeah. There's something that happens within the episode that advances the storyline. And like you said, we know with the foresight of benefit of knowing that the gang comes back. My question is, what did this do for any of these characters to advance them? Melanie is in exactly the same place as she was last time. She's still not with her family. She's clearly still in the outs with her family. If anything, I guess you could say that she now knows that her family really is ruthless, and she already thought they didn't care about her, right. But now she knows they don't care about her, I guess. But it doesn't advance anything for Terry, really. I mean, you could say that he morally did the right thing in throwing the note away and not caring anymore, but he still freaking cheated on his girlfriend, right, with this girl during this episode. So I don't know. It doesn't feel like the characters advance at anything. It feels like an episode that was built around the idea of, what if we need to put the Royal Flush Gang in an episode, so we're just this is gonna be the storyline, and we'll use them again later on down the road, because there's nothing of significance that happens in this episode that to me changes anybody's storyline or advances any character development. So for that reason, I gave this my final score of 5 out of 10 for the episode, just for plot, because it's just middle of the road, and I don't hate it other than Terry. I hate Terry McGinnis. Yeah, but sucks. Yeah, justice for Dana. Dana deserves better. # Dana deserves better. But yeah, this is not a great episode, because it just kind of hangs out in the middle and doesn't really do anything.
Yeah, and it feels like, as you said, like when next we meet these characters, they'll still be in the same place. Terry still won't be sure if he can trust her.
Not sure if he loves her or not.
Does he actually love her? Was it just a fleeting romance attraction or whatever? Like, we're basically back to square one where we were at the end of, or at the beginning of this episode, which is generally, I would think, a failure of.
What did you give your score?
I'm not sure, and just in case I didn't give my score here, I would give mine as a 6 out of 10, so right in the same ballpark as you.
Very good. Okay, Liam, let's move forward to animation. Animation and visuals. Okay, let's get this out of the way. Still hate Ten's hair. It's like somebody took a mop, an animation of a mop, and put it on a character's head. Hate her stupid spaghetti hair. Glad that we only see it for like one scene. She's in costume for the majority of the time. I did like the opening scene with her where she utilizes, kind of not really given a reason why or how, the red glasses block the giant flash of light that blinds everybody in the room that she's stealing from. But it was cool. It's, again, we've talked about this several times. It's a very toyetic character that should have their own action figure made. I can see it now. Like, she should come with the red glasses, and she should come with the exploding 10 card that she throws on the table. Like, come with a giant playing card she rides on.
That could be her stand.
Come on, DC Collectibles. We're printing money for you. What are we doing?
We got to talk to McFarlane now? Who are we talking to?
Yeah, well, yeah. What do we got to do to make this stuff happen? Because it's far past the time that this should have been made. Anyway, I don't know if that was a nod to anything. There's a pretty famous poster of Woody Harrelson from the movie Natural Born Killers where he's wearing similar sunglasses. Yes. So I don't know if the character design was supposed to look like that. I've never seen that movie, so I don't know if there's any sort of parallels between. It doesn't seem like there would be, but I don't know if there's any parallels there. But that did just remind me of that with her red glasses. Anyway, the rest of the episode gives you a great opportunity to flex some visual muscles. There's a whole scene with a bunch of Jokers. Yeah. So we see a lot of the returning Jokers that we've seen, the character models. The
return of the Jokers,
the return of the Jokers. That's right. A lot of the ones that we've seen already, as well as some new designs. So that was fun. We get a Batmobile appearance as well in that same scene. The poker game, the characters from the poker game are all unique designs, and I feel like they may have been homages to real life actors or something. I did not go through or bother to go through and look, but there's probably some real life people, just because they weren't just your basic drawings or character designs. So feel free to tweet Liam at DCA Review if you have a thought on who those people are designed after. But visually, other than Melanie's hair getting in my head, it's a pretty visually fun episode. So I gave it a score of 8 out of 10 for that.
Yeah, and I gave it the exact same score, 8 out of 10. One of the scenes I did like, it's in, I believe, the first time Batman sees 10 and is chasing her. He puts like a grappling hook through her card, and she's kind of flying through the city. He's hanging on. He crashes into a window, and it flashes to her, so you're kind of watching her fly over the building, and then you see Batman burst out of the other side of the building and then come back at her, and it's kind of all done as one continuous shot. There are not really any cuts in it. So I thought the animation there was especially well done. They really went above and beyond in some of that. And as you mentioned, yeah, a lot of cool visuals. I like the female gangster, especially with like the white hair and the red outfit. I thought that was a really striking design. So there was also a callback that you pointed out as we were watching it, that to the episode Rebirth, where there's a 360 pan shot of Terry. It's actually kind of just the intro to the Batman Beyond show. There's the shot in the, it's like a second long, and I believe it's not actually CGI. I think they were like little miniatures that were sculpted.
Yeah, they said they put them on like a turntable or something.
What you call a lazy Susan, and just did a spin around on a camcorder. But it's that shot you see it every time you watch if you watch the opening theme to Batman Beyond, that's in there, and they kind of redo that shot here with Batman and the Jokers.
Yeah, that was a neat visual. So that certainly, the visuals I think are stronger than the plot so far.
Agreed. Yeah.
All right.
Based on our scores, it's definitely yes.
All right, Liam. Let's move on to music, shall we? Music was there. It definitely was there. There was some background music. Certainly, it's a very Batman Beyond episode.
Yes. We didn't get the return of the power ballad, White Snake music from the first Royal Flush Gang episode.
Much to my chagrin.
Doggone it.
Or the acoustic guitar that I so very much love from that first season.
Yeah, they really laid off Cal's favorites in this episode. But yeah, it's pretty much just, there's some kind of good fight, exciting chase music during some of those sequences that we've already mentioned, and during the final bit there, and there's some kind of softer music. The reveal, and this is partially visuals as well, where it's fully revealed that it's that King is the one that's been fake holding himself for ransom. You see him in silhouette, and the music is really subtle and quiet, and then sort of swells a little bit as he walks into frame, and they reveal the plot of it. So, but yeah, there's nothing particularly spectacular. I will mention we're not crapping on it, for the record. Like, it's all fine. It's all solid.
It's not blow you away great, and it's not terrible.
Right. Yeah. So
I don't think we've ever given music a bad score. Maybe I've talked about the acoustic guitar and the power ballad.
But that was more like maybe it knocked it down a point or two. Not like, we hated the music. But yeah, I gave music 5 out of 10. Lolita Romanis was the composer for this episode, so I always like to mention that. But like I said, nothing bad, but nothing super standout either. Yeah,
I gave it 6 out of 10. I think that the scene with the Jokers gave it just a slight edge over just the middle of the road, just because that scene is pretty intense, because Batman's locked in a meat locker with the entire Joker's gang.
Yes.
And it's sort of a battle royale, if you will, a sort of, he's taking on one gangster at a time, and it builds the tension when they get a chain around his neck and they're about to seemingly end him, and then the Batmobile bursts in, and there's sort of this crescendo that happens. But it's not bad. It's just not blow you away, stand out. This is amazing for this week's episode. All right, Liam, let's move to our final category of the day, voice actors. So we have some returning guests from our original Royal Flush Gang episode, and also a new cast member, at least one new cast member that has been swapped out for one of the old ones. Let's talk about this week's voice cast.
Yeah, so of course we have our main duo of Kevin Conroy and Will Friedle, who we can get to in the end of the segment. But of course we have the returning Olivia Dabo as 10/Melanie Walker. I think she does a good job. It's, again, I think it's let down by what the script entails, but I think she does. She's able to show a little more emotion, especially in the scene with King and Queen at the end, where it's revealed that she's sort of been led on this wild goose chase that was just an elaborate loyalty test by her parents. I think that really stands out. So I think she's pretty solid in that scene. Other than that, we do have the returning George Lazenby, James Bond himself, as King. And we actually have a new actress playing Queen, as this time it is Sarah Douglas, who would probably most famously be to someone listening to this podcast. She played the Kryptonian villainess Ursa in the Christopher Reeve Superman films. She's at the beginning of one and then is one of the main villains of Superman 2.
Okay.
So cool little hidden DC Easter egg in
there. You go.
There.
Continuity. Got to keep it all in the family.
Yeah. So it's and again, I think everyone's fine. Other than that, obviously we have some of the other. We have the gangsters that we meet. We have Miguel Sandoval as Benny, Bernie Casey as Tyrus Black, Daphne Zuniga as Lula, and we also have a brief, albeit brief, appearances by Cree Summer as Max, Lauren Tom as Dana, who, if we have not mentioned, deserves so much better.
So much better than Terry.
And Ryan O'Donoghue again as Matt McGinnis, all in sort of very brief roles. But I think the best parts of this episode for me were the interactions between Bruce and Terry, Kevin Conroy and Will Friedle. We didn't really mention this in plot, but one of the things is when Terry goes to kind of confront the Jokers, he lies to Bruce and tells him that he's studying with Dana. And, man, Terry just doesn't respect anyone in his life.
He's a terrible human being.
Because he knows Bruce would try to talk him out of trusting Ten and going with her to this hideout. So Bruce kind of gets to be really sarcastic and snarky to him, and then when it all blows up in Terry's face, as of course it does.
Yep.
Bruce kind of gets to, but he doesn't lecture again. It's not like a big lecture. He tells him he kind of just tells him this is part of being Batman. You're gonna fall in love with a supervillain, and she's gonna break your heart, and it's gonna happen at least 3 times.
Yeah, it's funny because we've been sitting here thinking about this, and one of the things that we talked about back in Robin's Reckoning, which you can hear in the archives at DCAUreview.com, but in that episode we talked about, and then of course an episode we haven't talked about yet, Old Wounds, where really one of the problems that Dick had with Bruce was just the person that he really is. Yes, he's this beacon of justice, and he fights for justice all the time, but as a human being, he really isn't a great person. And we've talked about that before. I think that's
poor
why
social skills.
That's why you appreciate who Superman is and the character that Clark Kent is, and he is a good person on top of being a superhero. Batman, he's cool, but as far as his relationships go and the people that he values, Bruce Wayne, not a great person.
Right.
Terry McGinnis, and as we know, spoiler alert, is related to Bruce Wayne by genetics. Also not a great person.
No.
So it's not surprising, and I think that the conversation that they have, and certainly I'm trying to desperately to tie this back into the voice acting section here, but the fact that you have this interaction that happens between Terry and Bruce, where Bruce doesn't lecture him, doesn't give him an earful for lying to him, he is snarky with him, and he's Terry asks him, "Are you going to give me a lecture?" And he's like, "Not right now." And but maybe it has something to do with the fact that those characters are so similar in the fact that they do these things, don't really offer apologies for them.
Yeah.
But it's overall, it's for the greater good of justice in most cases.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously such a theme of Batman, and especially Batman Beyond. When we meet Bruce again in Rebirth Part 1, he's an old man who lives alone, and his only friend is his dog. And obviously throughout the series, he and Barbara reconnect a little bit. In Return of the Joker, he and Tim get to reconnect at the end. But yeah, to this point in the series, everyone has left him because of who he is as a person.
Right.
It's not because they hate Batman. It's, I think Barbara even says that in the Chiari episode. I don't hate Bruce, I hate what he's become. He was a great man who is now just old and bitter. And
right. I don't know if he was ever a great man. That's what I'm questioning
that's
here.
Fair, and I think that's a really interesting thing is that, yes, you could say Batman is a great symbol of hope and justice and a great warrior for the side of good, but is Bruce Wayne
Batman is great.
Person?
Bruce Wayne, not so
right.
great. And so the fact that Terry is equally not so great, maybe subtly. I don't know that that's necessarily intentional with the way that this character is written. All I'm saying is I'm still so stuck on what a terrible person Terry McGinnis is. With that said,
that's not Wilfred L's fault.
But that's not Wilfred L's fault. He plays the character very well, and him and Kevin Conroy have some great interactions here. I don't think I've bothered to give a score yet for my voice acting.
I haven't
yet.
either. It's fine.
With that said, I think that overall voice acting is fine in this episode. I think that I don't remember what I gave the score for in the original Royal Flush Gang, or having too many problems with anybody's performance in particular. I think they're all fine. Nothing in it stands out though as a tremendous, oh, this is a great scene. I don't necessarily think that the interactions between Terry and Melanie in that one scene feel particularly warm, or I don't know. It doesn't feel like that they are this, I don't know, ex-lovers, which I guess they technically really aren't, because their romance lasted like 6 hours.
Right.
But as you so dutifully pointed out. But score 7 out of 10.
Yeah, I am very similar in that same ballpark with a 7 out of 10. Sorry,
so similar.
My notes there. So similar. In fact, it's exactly the same. I also gave it a 7 out of 10. Like I said, I think everyone is good. I don't think anyone's particularly great, though.
All right. That will bring us to our final scores, Liam, which, totaling everything up here for me, I have seems like a very generous score based on not loving the plot, but that's why we do an overall score as opposed to just individual, and we break it down into individual scores. 26 out of 40 was my final score. What about you? Get the heck out.
Yes, assuming I'm doing this math right, I also have a final score of 26 out of 40.
2 men, 1 brain.
Yep, pretty much.
All right.
Rewatchability. Let's talk about it.
Skip it. You don't need to see this episode.
Yeah, as we've said, you should definitely watch the first Royal Flush Gang episode, because that's important. This one, you can skip it, and there's not really much about this episode. I think Melanie does ask Batman about the note in the next episode, so that's referenced, but that's not enough of a reason to watch this episode.
Agreed. And yeah, I mean, if you need supporting evidence and you're building a case against Terry being a terrible boyfriend,
if you have a video essay that you like to do and you want us to consult on it,
yes, absolutely, then watch this episode. This is like Exhibit Z, no doubt, in your case. But yeah, Terry's a terrible boyfriend. I got mad watching this episode because there's never any justice given for Dana. He never gets justice for treating Dana like crap. Right. Max is absolutely and 110% complicit. We didn't point that out.
Yeah, she immediately figures out that, like, oh, this isn't just a friend. You're helping like a girl, and he's like, I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out. She's like, well, you should, because it's unfair to Dana, and then just kind of goes back to...
And she's like, but I'm not going to let Dana know or hold you to that because, it's you're Batman. It's okay.
Right. It's all good.
Sucks. This guy sucks. I'm so angry.
Yeah.
I feel like my score should be lower with how angry I am. Usually I reserve this anger for episodes that are very bad.
Yeah, and like we said, it's not that bad, but you can definitely skip it unless, of course, you just want to confirm for yourself how terrible of a person Terry McGinnis is to this point in the series.
Agreed. All right, Liam, that will wrap us up for this week's episode. But before we do, shall we discuss next week's episode coming up in just 1 week?
Yep, and that will be the final Batman Beyond episode that we will be reviewing for the month of January, and that will in fact be the episode Hooked Up. I don't remember this episode particularly well, as I think we've mentioned in the past. I didn't watch a lot of Batman Beyond in the first run.
You weren't allowed to.
Correct. So
too scary.
Some episodes I saw on Cartoon Network, some I saw years later on DVD, but this is not one that really sticks out to me. So I'm looking forward to checking out Hooked Up, which I believe focuses on Max and the returning Spellbinder. So.
Yeah, we liked the first Spellbinder episode pretty well. It wasn't a top pick, but it definitely ranked in the higher or upper echelon of Batman Beyond episodes. So it'll be interesting to see how the episode number 2, now that we're in this sort of new era the high school Terry.
Yes.
Whether or not that reflects on this episode or not. But don't forget to follow us on your favorite podcast app. By now, you should be able to say them in your sleep. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media at DCAU Review. We are on both Twitter and Instagram. Instagram has your clips coming up for episodes yet to be played, and of course occasionally we'll drop a flashback episode in there as well, so make sure you follow us there. And then Liam runs our Twitter page. Liam, we have some exciting news always delivered. We'll announce what topic we're covering for the next month, or what series is being covered, so we'll definitely be talking about that in the next few weeks. Anything else you got going on over there?
Not really at the moment, other than obviously we're always looking for feedback on what you'd like us to review next. And I don't know if y'all have noticed by the episode numbers, but we're gonna soon be starting a countdown to our 100th episode.
We're very excited about that. Got a big plan for that one, which is going to open up our world a little bit. I'm very excited about that.
Absolutely.
And of course, don't forget also check out our bonus episodes that we've released. We've just completed our 3rd bonus episode. So definitely you're going to want to check those out. We have those available in the archives at DCAUreview.com.
Yep, still recovering from the end of Crisis on Infinite Earths on the CW, but it was epic, and loved talking about that stuff on our 3rd bonus episode. So definitely check that out as well.
Yeah, all right. Well, that will wrap us up for this week. I'm Cal,
and I'm Liam,
and we'll talk to you on the very next episode of the DCAU Review.
Goodbye.